Hey there, friends. I am so excited to be here with you for Crop and Create Delivered. My name is Meghann Andrew, and a lot of you know me from the in-person Crop and Create events. And let me just say, I miss you all so very much, and I can't wait till we're back in person again. But how awesome is it that we get to share the passion of scrapbooking that we love so much virtually. Today, I am going to be teaching beautiful balance. Balance is one of the principles of design that I think is most important in scrapbooking. And when you get the balance right on your layouts, then all of the other pieces just come together and the process becomes so much easier. So I hope that my class will teach you a little bit about how you can bring that balance to your pages in 3 different ways. So be sure to check the handout. I've given you a lot of information there, but watch this video as I create a single page layout and a double page layout focusing on balance.
I am so excited to be working with the beautiful Reaching Out collection from Jen Hadfield and American Crafts. We are creating our first layout. It's the single pager that we're going to create first. And we're starting with step 1. We are going to trim out a 10-inch square from the blush cardstock. Now I'm doing this because I don't like to waste any paper. If you choose to create this layout with the full sheet of blush cardstock, that is completely up to you. But right now I'm just trimming out a 10-inch square from the inside of this 12 by 12 piece of cardstock. So I'm using the guides on my trimmer to help me out with that. If you don't feel confident doing that, then you can certainly grab a ruler and a pencil and make your own guidelines instead of just trimming. I like to do this because maybe on another layout I might want some more blush cardstock, maybe to create a photo mat, and this is just a great way to get a nice big piece, a 10-inch piece of cardstock. So we can trim that out and just put that to the side. That blush cardstock piece is going to create our frame on this layout. And on step 2, we're going to trim the white cardstock to 11-inch square. One great way to get balance quickly on a layout is to create a frame. And that's because the frame is equal on all sides, so it automatically creates a sense of balance. It also puts most of the weight toward the outside of the page. Another thing that it does is it creates contrast. So you can see here I'm using white cardstock on the pink cardstock. So you have a nice contrasting of colors there, and that helps to create some balance. So I am adhering my white cardstock to the pink frame. One thing that I like to make sure is that the texture on my white cardstock is going in the way that I prefer. So I like my texture going horizontally. So you can see there that I turned that paper. Now that is just a personal preference, has nothing to do with design at all. I just like that texture to go horizontally. Okay, so now we have our nice pretty framed layout background. We're going to step number 3, and we are going to grab the Rainbow Skies paper. This is an awesome sheet of paper, and I knew that I wanted it as soon as I saw this new collection. If you turn to page 5 on your lesson booklet, in my lesson, you will see that there is this great graphic for how we're going to cut this out. So we're going to go through this step by step, and I want you guys to pay attention to what I do and to the graphic. The first thing that we're going to do is cut off the manufacturer's strip. Now be sure that you're saving these because they all have really fun designs on them that you can use later on, and we are going to use some of those on our double page layout. So cutting off the manufacturer's strip was cut number one. Next, I'm going to grab my straight scissors and I am going to cut this entire red floral stripe. So this long stripe, we are going to cut it, and just try to be sure that you are cutting it as straight as possible. But trust me when I tell you that if you're not great at cutting in a straight line, you're really not going to notice much on this page. We are going to have lots of pattern paper pieces kind of radiating out on this page, so you will not notice if it's a little bit wonky. Don't worry about that. The next cut we're going to make is this smaller yellow stripe from the corner. Now that little triangular piece there, we don't need to worry about that. You can save it for another layout, but it's not totally necessary. Next, we're going to turn the paper over, and we're going to focus on some of these awesome stripes here. On the diagram, I marked cuts 5 and cuts 6, and really you can do either one in either order, but it's kind of easier if you go ahead and cut off the stripe below where you cut the red stripe, and I kind of laid that out there so you could see where we cut out that big red stripe. So I cut the below piece first, and then I'm going to turn this paper over. So when you turn the paper over, you see that you have a long yellow stripe there, and we are going to use some of that. So what I'm going to do now is above this diagonal line, I am going to cut my 3 pink and red stripes on the right side. So just cut that straight out. You can use a trimmer here or you can use your scissors, whichever you prefer. Then I'm going to turn it over and cut that yellow diagonal, just so I have the full length of that diagonal. Then I can cut the rest of that pink and red stripe. So you have the pink and red stripe that was above and below that yellow floral. You have the long red floral, the short yellow floral, and then these are your leftover pieces. Feel free to go back and re-watch this part. This is the trickiest cut we're going to make for this layout, I promise you. Everything else is just straight up cutting from here on out. Okay, next we're going to take the pieces that we just cut out of the Rainbow Skies paper. I'm just going to straighten this up a little bit here, and we are going to cut some of those in half. Now this is a great opportunity to kind of straighten that up because it's a lot simpler to do that when it's away from that stripe. So I'm just going to cut that in half here, just a straight cut in the middle, and you don't have to measure it. I would just eyeball it. I'm going to do the same with this one, this yellow longer stripe. And so you should have 2 floral reds, 3 floral yellows, and 2 red and pink stripes. Our next step is step number 5. We are grabbing the blue dotted scatter friendship pattern paper, and we are going to cut a 12-inch by 1.5-inch piece. Now one thing that I like to do, you're going to notice here I slid that over to the left just a tiny bit, so it's just over 1.5. I like to make sure that when I have a dotted or a striped paper, I have those dots equal on either side of my cut. So if on the left side the dots are kind of halfway on that cut, I'm going to do the same on the right side. And that's again just a personal preference. I like to make sure that my pattern is equal on all of my cuts. I am also going to cut one 12-inch by 2-inch strip. So you can see there that I cut the first 1.5-inch strip in half at 6 by 1.5. I'm going to do the same to this one. So I have 2 6 by 1.5 and 2 6 by 2-inch strips of the scatter friendship paper. Now because we only need 3 of these pieces, we're going to take one of the 2-inch pieces and put that aside to use at a later date. It's a great scrap of paper to create a card or create something else on another layout. For our next step, we are going to create notched ends on these pieces of pattern paper. And I like to do the first cut with a trimmer because I can make sure that that first cut is centered on the piece of paper. So I am going to place this 2-inch piece of paper on the 1-inch guidelines and pull my trimmer down just a half of an inch. Then I'm going to take my scissors and cut from the corner to the end of that cut, and again from the corner to the end of that cut. So creating a pennant end on this piece of pattern paper. So let me do that again for you here. This one is 1.5 inches, so I would put the edges of the paper at the 3/4 inch mark. I'm going to pull my trimmer blade down only half of an inch, and then use my scissors to cut from corner to the end of that cut, and then again from the corner to the end of that cut. And we're going to do the same thing on this last piece. This one is also 1.5 inches, so we're going to put the edges on the 3/4 inch mark, pull down only half of an inch, and then cut from the corner to the center and the corner to the center again. We're going to do this on both layouts quite a few times, so now that you know how I do this, then you should be able to recreate that. If you feel more comfortable doing it with scissors than your trimmer, then please go ahead and do that. Next, for step number 6, we are grabbing this multicolored dot hanging out paper, and we are going to cut one 12 by 1.25 inch strip. And again, you're going to see that I will slightly go over 1.25 just to make sure I have the same amount of dot on the left and the right side of that cut. So I'm just going to adjust that ever so slightly. If you don't care about, getting that dot even on both sides, then feel free to just do a straight up 1.25 inch cut. Then I'm going to cut this in half to make two 6 by 1.25 inch strips. I'm going to take the same piece of paper and cut 1-inch strips now. So we're going to cut 12 by 1 inch. And that one looks even, so I didn't have to adjust that one. And then I'm going to take that piece and cut it in half to make two 6 by 1 inch pieces. Now I'm going to do the notching again. So I'm going to put that in the center, cut a half of an inch, and then do the same thing with my scissors. There are definitely punches out there that'll do the same thing. You could even get a square punch, turn it at an angle, and make a notched end on your pieces. But I find that I don't need to get another tool in my scrap space, and my space is at a premium here. And then I can always use scissors and my trimmer to do this. I quite often cut these pennant ends on my paper just because I find that it's more interesting than seeing a straight edge, and it creates a sense of playfulness and fun where you see pennant ends are on flags and banners and bunting, and those are all fun things, so it's kind of fun to add this end on your pieces of paper. Plus you can also get dimension here by just curling up the edges of those ends. It really creates a sense of three dimension on your layout when you add that dimension by just pulling up the ends of those pennants with your fingertips. Okay, so this is the last pennant end cut, or notched end, whatever you call it. That's the last one on this piece of paper. So in the next step, I stitch down each of these pieces, right down the center. I'm going to show you these here. You do not have to do this step. If you don't have a sewing machine, don't worry. You could also use just your pen and a ruler and create faux stitching down the center if you wanted to do that with a gray marker or a black marker if you wanted some contrast. But I used some white thread here just to stitch right down the center of each piece. And then I wanted to not have my threads hanging off of this layout. Sometimes I do choose to let my threads hang loose, but on this one, I'm just putting the threads on the back of the pieces and putting some tape there to secure those down. I love stitching on layouts because I think it adds that extra texture. So very often we're creating with a lot of things that are just paper, and I think that stitching really helps to add uh, interest with texture on our pages. So totally something you can do if you want, and it doesn't have to be done. On the flip side, you could also choose to stitch down every single one of these pieces to have, a lot of texture on your page. Okay, so these are the 4 pieces of our hanging out multicolor dot. 2 are 6 by 1.25 and 2 are 6 by 1. Next up, we are going to make a little journaling spot for our layout. And we're going to take a piece of the white cardstock in our pack and cut it 3.5 inches by 2 inches. For all my friends out there who don't love journaling, I didn't make this a massive spot for you. It can hold about a sentence and a date on there, so don't stress about having to add too much to this layout. So I'm going to put that notched end at the end of this one too. 1/2 inch is what I cut, and then I'm going to again use my scissors to cut from the corner to the middle to create that notched end, and I'm going to set that one aside. Now with that, we have cut all of our pattern paper pieces for this layout. So hooray! We have a little bit of fussy cutting, not much, but those are all of our major pieces of cutting done. So I am grabbing my framed background, and the next step we are going to grab a ruler and a pencil, and we're just going to mark the center point of this layout. Now, I will say that you don't have to get everything right on center. This layout is going to look fabulous no matter what. Don't stress about making sure that everything is exactly in the middle, because number one, your photo is going to be in the center of this layout, so it's going to cover anything that is slightly off, so you don't have to stress about that. The first pieces that we are going to adhere down are our red floral strips from the Rainbow Skies paper. And if you see here, I am arranging them almost in a diagonal line across the layout. So I'm kind of placing the end of those at the center point of my layout, and the angled end is going to be facing that top right corner about 1/2 inch from the top edge of the white cardstock piece. And then we're going to place the other piece directly opposite that, pointing toward the bottom left corner of the page. Same thing, about 1/2 inch away from that bottom edge of the white cardstock. You want to leave about 1/2 inch at the end of the strip without any adhesive, because at the end of this we are going to create a lot of dimension by pulling up and curling those pieces at the ends. So from here we're going to kind of work counterclockwise around this page, creating almost a sunburst effect with all of these beautiful patterns that we've cut. Some of them will have just their angled ends from when we cut them off the page, and some of them will have those notched ends, but it's going to be really beautiful. So all of that cutting will have paid off. Next, we're going to grab the Scatter Friendship Blue Dot paper. We're going to grab that 2-inch piece with the notched end. We're going to overlap the red floral strip using permanent adhesive, and we're going to put some dimensional adhesive at the end. So whatever kind of foam tape that you have, just pop one of those at the end because that's going to help it to really stand up off the page. Now this one is almost vertical. It's about 1¼ inches from that top edge. Okay, working counterclockwise, we're going to go to the left. We are going to take the shortest piece of the yellow floral strip from the Rainbow Skies paper. So you can see there that I checked to make sure it was the shortest. They're all pretty similar, so if you pick up the wrong one, it's no big deal, friends. We're going to tuck that underneath the edge of the blue Scatter Friendship paper and adhere that down with permanent adhesive. Now this point of this piece will be about 5/8 of an inch from the top of that white cardstock edge, and just at a slight angle to the left. Now you can see there that there's a gap on this one because it's much shorter, but don't worry that you won't see any gaps on this layout. We're going to cover everything with our photo. We're going to cover things with pieces of floral paper. All of that is going to be covered. On step 13, we are going to take the longest piece of the red and pink stripes from the Rainbow Skies paper. We're going to adhere that using permanent adhesive on the left of that yellow floral there. And that piece is pointing directly toward that top left corner. And it's about 1½ inches from the edge of that white cardstock. Next up in step 14, we're going to adhere one of the 1-inch wide strips from the hanging out polka dot. We're going to use permanent adhesive at the base and then another piece of foam adhesive at the end. And we're just going to overlap that red stripe. And the end is about 1/2 inch from the left edge of the white cardstock. Now I'm giving you guys all of these measurements of where kind of the end is going to lie on this page, but if it's not exact to yours, don't worry. It's still going to look great. We're going to grab another Scatter Friendship. This one is the 1½ inch wide piece. And we're going to overlap the hanging out polka dot paper and adhere that one almost at a 9 o'clock there, just slightly over that. It's going to be 1/4 inch. Okay, I kind of got ahead of myself here and skipped ahead to number 17. So I got this piece of the 1¼ inch of the hanging out dotted paper ready to go by placing some permanent adhesive at the base and some foam adhesive at the end, and then realized that I hadn't put my yellow piece down yet. So in number 16, you want to grab one of the remaining yellow floral stripes. It doesn't matter which one because they're both the same sort of size. And you're going to adhere that with permanent adhesive right over the blue dot paper. And you can see there that that is at like an 8 o'clock kind of angle if we're talking a clock here. And then I'm going to place in number 17 the hanging out multicolored dot. Now, before I adhered this piece down, the hanging out dot paper, I noticed that I was going to cover a lot of that red floral. So I just moved that slightly at just a tiny, tiny bit, just so I could make sure that I didn't cover up too much of that red floral because I wanted to see that. If you notice at all when you're creating this layout that you want to see more of one of the patterns than the other, then just change your angles up a bit. It doesn't have to look exactly like mine. Next up, number 18, we're going to grab the shortest piece of the red and pink stripes from the Rainbow Skies paper. We're going to use permanent adhesive to adhere this one down. And it's kind of opposite of where we have the other piece of the striped red and pink paper. This one is going to be about a half of an inch from the bottom edge of the white cardstock there. And remember as you're going along to not adhere all the way to the end. You want to make sure that you leave about an inch from the end that we're going to pull up later. Okay, this is the final piece of our Scatter Friendship paper. It's the 1.5 inch strip. We are going to put foam adhesive on the end, permanent adhesive at the base, and we are going to adhere that just over the striped pattern. And that's going to be about 1.25 from the bottom edge of the white cardstock. You can see there that this is the most contrasting pattern. It's the one that sticks out the most from our background. And I've used 3 pieces of that because 3s and 5s bring a lot of balance to your layout. So if you do things in 3s and 5s, it often helps with balance. On number 20, we're going to take the final 1-inch piece of the hanging out multicolored dot. We're going to use some permanent adhesive at the base, just in the center, and grab some foam adhesive to put at the end. And we're going to kind of tuck that underneath the blue dot there. This one is going to get pretty close to the edge as well, about 3/8 of an inch from the edge. As you can see at this point, it looks kind of a mess. Everything is on top of each other, and the middle bit is just getting really layered right now, but it's going to look so awesome when we add our photo and everything else. So this is number 21. This is the final piece of the yellow floral strip. We are adhering that over the top of that multicolored dot and tucked underneath of the blue dot. This piece is going to be about 1/4 of an inch from the right edge of the white cardstock. Next up, this is where our journaling spot is going to go. And I'm just slightly tucking that under the yellow floral. And that's because I don't want to take up too much of my journaling space. So I'm even going to adjust that yellow floral a little bit just to make sure that I give myself enough space. At this point, I had a tiny blip in my video, so it didn't film the very last thing that we adhered, and that is in number 23, we're adhering the final piece of the 1.25 inch piece of hanging out multicolored dot. You're going to use permanent adhesive at the base and foam adhesive at the notched ends. This piece will be 1/4 of an inch from the right side of the white cardstock. And if you think about it in terms of where it lies on a clock, it's going to be at about a 2 o'clock. So it's going to slightly overlap our white journaling piece. Now that all of our pattern paper strips have been adhered, I am going to ask you to do a tiny bit of fussy cutting. We are grabbing the Blossoms for You paper, and I've added a little graphic on your instructions to show you which 2 bunches of flowers to cut out. Now you can see there that I already cut off the bunch on the edge of the paper. I also want you to cut off this bunch here close to the manufacturer's strip. Now, fussy cutting can be great if you have the right scissors, and the scissors are really a preference, but I like to have short scissors for this. I actually use these old scissors from Stampin' Up! That are meant to cut stamps, like back in the day when we had rubber stamps that we needed to cut out. Um, but I find that they work really well for fussy cutting. And the tip that I will give you is to move your paper instead of your scissors. As you can see here, I'm kind of moving the paper back and forth. Also, when you get to a certain point, flip the paper to make it easier for you to cut. I also don't like to fussy cut too close to the image. I like to keep a slight white border around the outside, just like you would see on a pack of die cuts. So, pause the video here, friends, and get to fussy cutting these two bunches of florals. This is the only fussy cutting we'll do on this layout, and I will say that pattern paper is by far so much less expensive than buying a pack of die cuts. So when I see a floral design on a pattern paper, I love to fussy cut those out instead of buying an expensive pack of floral die cuts. Now in step number 25, we adhered our photo, our 4x6 landscape photo, to the center of the page, and that's going to cover all of the ends of the pattern paper. I will say to make sure you leave about a half of an inch clear on the edges of your photo to be sure that you can slide bits and pieces underneath those edges. Now let's move on to step number 27. We have our two floral groupings that we cut from the Blossoms for You paper. The first one has that straight edge because we cut it from the edge of the paper, and we are going to put that right at the top. It's going to cover up that gap between the red and pink stripe and the yellow floral. So I like to put some permanent adhesive at the bottom and some dimensional adhesive at the top of that piece. And you could see there that I kind of ruffled up those flowers a bit on the top to give that some extra dimension there. So once I have that piece in place, you'll see that the yellow floral just slightly sticks out from there. The other one we are going to put down here at this big gap between the red floral and the red and pink stripe. And again, I'm going to use permanent adhesive near that yellow flower, which I'm going to tuck under my photo, and dimensional adhesive where the leaves are. I really love the look that this creates. It's already looking so pretty. So we're mixing our pattern paper strips with these florals now. The next step is that we're going to grab the Icon ephemera pack. We are going to grab 3 more floral die cuts because remember, I like to do things in 3s and 5s, and that's because 3s and 5s, those odd numbers, create more balance on the page. So we're going to do 5 floral groupings on this layout. We're going to grab 3 more of the floral die cuts here. So this small one. Now remember, if you are struggling to figure out which ones I used, it really doesn't matter. All of these florals are beautiful and they will all look great if you stick them in the same place that I did. Some of these florals are kind of tricky to figure out which one is which. And there are a lot of beautiful floral pieces in this set. So there's a large one there. I'm just kind of pulling out the ones here that I see. Some of them have dark blue, almost black flowers on them, and some of them don't. So here's that large one here that has the black flowers, and the other one opposite it also has the black flowers, and we are going to kind of tuck those underneath of our photo. The smallest floral grouping is going to be at the top right corner. And we're going to stick that right there on top of the multicolor dot and the red floral. Then we're going to grab this larger floral piece. I'm going to use some foam adhesive at the end of it, and I'm going to stick that right there, overlapping the yellow floral and the blue polka dot. This other large floral, I'm just going to trim just slightly just to get it underneath of my photo. So if you want to trim off any of those pieces just to make them fit better underneath your photo, then by all means go ahead and do that. I'm even going to try to pull up the corner of my photo a little bit here just to get that exactly where I want it. In this area here, I don't want to cover up too much of my journaling area. Okay, those are the 5 floral pieces in place, and those are balanced really beautifully around the page. Next up, we're going to locate the gold foiled heart. This is in the same icon ephemera pack. We have 2 ephemera packs in this kit. This is the icon ephemera pack. So the gold heart and the trio of hearts there. The gold heart is just going to be adhered with permanent adhesive to the largest blue polka dot paper. Right there at the top. And these 3 are going to be here at the bottom corner, and they're going to be upside down, and that's because they're supposed to be radiating out from the center of the page. So it's almost like our photo exploded with happiness of pattern paper and florals and hearts. So that's what's happening on this page. And when you think of a radial balanced layout, that's what it's like. Think of a wheel, a bicycle wheel, and the spokes coming out from the center. So when you design a radially balanced layout, that's what it looks like. Everything's coming out from the center. Now we are going to grab the phrase ephemera pack, and we are going to locate the love you heart. Well, it says love ya. The smile black banner. And then we're looking for the happy day banner. These little banners are small, so they can be tricky to find, and I think my happy day has gotten stuck in here. There we go. The happy day banner is the blue one. Okay, I'm still looking for the love you banner, so I'm just grabbing that out of here. Make sure that when you open these, you do it carefully on your desk because some of these little pieces can get lost. And there's the little love you banner. That one is slightly off-white. So you have smile is the black banner, love you is off-white, happy day is blue. Then we are going to grab this piece of pattern paper. It's called Stick Together. And we are going to cut the top line that's closest to the manufacturer's strip. These little strips are so fun to use on your layouts, and I would say that this is kind of fussy cutting just because I do a little zigzag on the edges, but it's super easy to cut out. So we are going to cut out the best, and that one's like that orangey red color. And we're also going to cut out remember. Now, if you have phrases that you see on this sheet of pattern paper or in the icon ephemera pack that fit better with your story, with your layout, with your photo, then by all means choose whichever ones will work best for you. I want your layout to be your own, and I want it to speak to the story that you're telling on the page. So with these little strips, I'm just going to curl them up on the ends. Then I'm going to use permanent adhesive to tuck them in around the edges of my photo. So Love You is going to go on the multicolor polka dot there. And if we're talking about that piece on a clock, it's at the 2 o'clock. Smile, the black one, is going to go under that floral grouping at about the 4 o'clock. Remember, the yellow one, is going to get tucked under that bottom left corner of my photo there. This one is from the ephemera pack. This is Happy Day, the blue one, and I'm going to put that right on top of the blue polka dot. And the final one, the best, we are going to put that right up there on the red stripe. And I'm just going to kind of finagle that under the edge of my photo there. And this is why it's great to leave a little bit of room around the edge of your photo to not put your dimensional adhesive all the way up to that edge so that you can get these pieces in underneath your photo. So there we go. I also have the Love Ya heart that we pulled out of the icon ephemera pack, and we are going to grab the celebrate word to use as our title. Again, if celebrate doesn't work that well for you, choose a different word from that pack that speaks to your story. I'm going to put the celebrate word right on my photo in the negative space there. And I love the way that looks on top of my photo, all of that beautiful color, so much fun. At this stage, if you want to go ahead and add your journaling to that white banner, this is a great time to do it. I used a blue pen to add my journaling there, and don't forget to put your date as well. Okay, friends, we've kind of reached the finish line of this layout. And one thing I love about balance is that you can have visual balance as to where things are placed on your layout, and then you can have textural balance too. So let's use some different textures on this page. That's why I wanted wood veneers and sequins in my layout pack. Wood veneer adds a totally different texture. It's natural like paper, but visually it stands out on the page. So we are going to add some of these beautiful wood veneer hearts and some sequins to get that extra sparkle on the page. I'm using liquid adhesive for my wood veneer hearts. You can use glue dots or whatever you prefer. I like to use this quick stick, almost liquid adhesive, to make sure that those stick on really quickly. Now again, the hearts are going to look like they're radiating, right? A radial design. They're radiating from the center of the page. Everything is coming out from the center in a radially designed layout, radially balanced layout. So we want to make sure those hearts are coming from the center out toward the edges. So the ones at the bottom are going to be upside down. After we've adhered our three hearts, and if you want to add more, by all means go ahead and do that. I'm going to start putting little dots of liquid adhesive all the way around the edge of the page, kind of tucking these little dots in between my pattern paper strips and at the ends of my pattern paper strips. And this is going to be where I'm going to place my sequins. I find it's much faster for me to put these little dots of adhesive down first and then follow up by placing my sequins on the dots. So I'm making my way around the edge of the page, just adding these little dots around my pattern paper pieces. I just love adding sequins to a page at the end. I feel like it just finishes it off so beautifully. I especially love these close to my heart sequin mixes. They are so gorgeous. They have, stars, they have translucent sequins, they have matte gold, they have sparkly gold, just beautiful assortment of sequins. So what I do here is if I have quite a few of the shiny gold larger sequins, I will make sure that I balance those around my page because I don't want, two or three next to each other. I'm going to place those all around the page and then move on to maybe my gold matte sequins. I want to mix up the sizes that I put around the page too, so making sure I have a few large ones at the top and a few at the bottom, and then go back in with some medium size sequins just to get that again balanced around the page. This class is all about balance. So you can see here how beautiful this radial design has come together by really focusing on the center of this page, and that's where our photo is. The story is that photo right in the center, and all of the elements that we placed on this page radiate from the center, and that's what radial design is all about. I really love creating radially balanced layouts, and you can do them in a number of different ways. This was one of the easiest ways, just by trimming pieces, strips of pattern paper to arrange them in a circular design coming out from the center of the page. So we didn't need any fancy tools, we didn't need any die cutting machines, just strips of pattern paper is all we needed. Once you've added enough sparkle to your page to make you happy, we are going to take our fingers, no special tools needed, and we are going to fluff this layout with our fingers on the ends of each of those pattern paper pieces. And this is why we did not adhere those down all the way to the ends. We are going to curl the ends of those pattern paper pieces to give this page maximum dimension and texture, and it's just going to look so beautiful. This is one of those layouts that you almost want to put in a shadow box instead of your album, because you know it's going to get flattened when you put it in a page protector. But any way you store it, this is a beautiful layout that you can use to treasure a special photo, a special memory for years to come. And I hope you guys loved creating this radial design. Okay, my friends, it's time for us to make our double pager. It starts on page 10 of the lesson booklet, and this layout is called Besties for the Day. I have two 4x6 landscape photos and two 4x4 photos that I'm using on this layout. If you decide you want to use different sized photos, you can totally make that work. I am starting off my layout with two of the white cardstock 12 by 12 inch pieces as my background. I love using white cardstock on the background. It's one of my most used things in my stash is white cardstock. So I'm just trimming off the manufacturer's strip here, first and foremost. On this layout, we're going to be learning about asymmetrical balance, and that's the kind of balance that we typically use on a double page layout. It's the trickiest type of balance to achieve just because you have two sides that have different things on each side that you need to balance out. So remember this scatter friendship paper. We are going to cut a piece of this to 7 inches by 12 inches. So you should have plenty of this paper left to cut this piece. Again, I made sure that my dots were even on both sides. That's just my personal preference. I'm going to adhere this piece of paper. I'm going to go ahead and put it on using permanent tape adhesive a half an inch from the right side of the page. As you can tell, we've almost used all of this blue dot paper, and I really love that it's not too navy, it's just the perfect hue of blue, and I really love it. So I'm measuring a half an inch there. I'm lining up the paper along the top edge. Okay, next we are going to create a really fun border for the top of our page. We've already added this really heavy piece of pattern paper in the scatter friendship paper. And next, we are going to create some horizontal elements that bring the weight across the page. So I've grabbed the Hello You paper, and we're going to cut off the manufacturer's strip, and then we're going to cut the top 2 rows of squares. So the top row has a peace sign, the second row has a hand with a heart. We're going to cut both of those off. But we're not going to use that side of this page. We're going to use the awesome rainbow border on the other side. Look how cool that rainbow is. And I'm going to ask you guys to fussy cut again because this rainbow is just too amazing not to fussy cut out. Plus, it's going to give us a really cool scalloped edge on our page. So this is the piece of paper at the very top next to the manufacturer's strip that has the peace sign on it. I've just turned that around and I'm cutting the arch edge at the bottom of those rainbows. We're going to have these rainbows hanging upside down like a scallop instead of right side up like a rainbow would be. So again, I'm using my short scissors here. These are my favorite scissors. You just use whatever scissors you prefer to use when you fussy cut. I'm being a little bit careful here, and the reason why is because this edge is going up against white cardstock, and that means there's going to be a lot of contrast here. So you want to make sure that you get a nice crisp arched edge here because you're going to notice those imperfections against the white cardstock if you don't get a nice edge. So take your time here, and if you want, if I'm going too quickly for you, you can always pause the video while you fussy cut. You could even put on your favorite podcast, a Netflix show that you need to catch up on, and fussy cut these beautiful rainbows out. This is one of the first sheets of pattern paper that I knew that I had to have when I saw the Reaching Out collection because I love these pieces of pattern paper that incorporate all of the colors that I want to use on a layout. So that's one great tip I have for you guys. When you're mixing and matching papers and patterns, try to find one piece, maybe two, of a pattern that includes all of the colors that you want to add to your layout, because that just brings all of the other pieces together. So I'm still cutting here. We're going all the way to the 12-inch mark on here, just cutting carefully along that bottom edge of the rainbows. Like I said, we have put on a big piece of pattern paper already, that dotted blue piece of paper. When we're talking about visual weight, high contrast holds more weight than low contrast. So we have that dark blue paper against the white background. So that's going to hold a lot of visual weight on the right side of our spread. And what we want to do is we want to spread that weight across the page over to the left side. And having these big horizontal elements that stretch across the design is going to help us move the weight and balance out the page design. Okay, here's my second row here. I'm going to turn this upside down again. You can see that I have 4 rows of rainbows there. And again, I'm just going to cut along that bottom row to make another scalloped edge. So we're going to do this all over again for the second 12-inch piece of paper. So like I said, we are going to start off heavy on the right side, but we are going to add elements and pattern and color that help us to distribute our weight across the page. If you're not a typical double page layout creator, you can still get ideas from this page design. Say you might want a column of pattern paper on a 12 by 12-inch piece. Well, it's always great to have some horizontal elements that come out from there to help you distribute the weight even on a single page layout. So just create this page, and then you can get different ideas on how to balance out your layouts, whether they're single or double page. Okay, I'm about halfway through this piece of paper, and even though I don't love fussy cutting, I think it is typically always worth it, because the pieces of paper that I fussy cut out are really awesome, and they always add something to the design, whether it's this awesome scalloped edge or a beautiful floral like we fussy cut out of the last layout. And this would not look the same if we didn't have this beautiful edge. So doing this few minutes of fussy cutting is going to be so worth it. Almost to the end here. So close. And again, like in our last layout, we are not going to adhere this all the way down at the bottom, because we're going to use our fingers again to create that dimension at the bottom of the scalloped edge. So remember that when we go to adhere. Okay, all done with the fussy cutting. So I am going to take out my permanent tape adhesive, and the one with the peace sign. So if you turn it over and you see the peace sign right here, that is going to go on the right side, and we're going to adhere that down first and foremost, because we're going to use that to gauge our placement of the next piece. The other piece is slightly taller, so this one you definitely want to adhere down first, and we're going to adhere that right to the top edge of your white pattern paper. We're going to cover the scatter friendship blue dot, and I'm just going forward here just to make sure that I get that lined up perfectly. Next, I'm going to take the second row. This is the one with the hand and the heart, and I'm going to adhere that on the left side. But before I stick it down, I'm going to make sure I'm going to line up my background papers, my cardstock there, and I'm going to make sure that these are lined up nicely so that your bottom edge is equal on the left and the right sides. And you also want to make sure that you get that even, which I didn't right there. So I'm quickly going to just pull that up to make sure that I get that even, because there is going to be a tiny little bit, about 1/8 of an inch, that you're going to need to cut off from the top of the page on this left side. It is slightly taller than the right side. So once you have that left side adhered down, grab your scissors and just trim off that tiny bit of excess there. Okay, there we go. How beautiful is that awesome border at the top? Really excited about that. Okay, before we move on to our next step, we are going to use our fingers again, our most important tool, to raise up the bottom edge of those scallops, just to add a bit of dimension here, and it's going to make it look so awesome. In our next step, this is number 7, we are taking the stick together paper. Remember that we fussy cut and used the first row in our first layout. Well, we're going to cut the second row and the third row. So we're just going to trim right in between those phrases. So like the colorful phrases, you want to put your trimmer line right in between those to be sure you don't cut any off. So rows 2 and rows 3. We're going to adhere the second row on the left side of the spread at the bottom edge. And then we're going to adhere the third row on the right side. So these are roughly about 1/2 of an inch. And again, we're incorporating all of the colors that we're going to be using on this layout at the bottom. So I'm just using my permanent adhesive here to add these to the bottom edge of the page. And don't worry that that phrase won't continue from the left to the right side. It'll still look great. And just remember that these are going to be separated slightly in your album too. Okay, we're moving on to step number 8, and we're grabbing the mint cardstock. I just love it, this green color. We're cutting a piece that's 12 inches by 2 inches. Again, just like in layout 1, we are going to notch 1/2 of an inch on the end here. So I'm going to line this up on my trimmer at the 1-inch mark, cut 1/2 of an inch in, and then use my scissors to cut from the corner to the center and the corner to the center again. Now this is going to be a great piece on our layout to bring some balance here because it is a solid. And we have a lot of patterns going on this page, but this solid is going to hold a lot of weight that goes directly across the page. It's going to help us pull some of that visual weight from the right side of the page over to the left. And this is also going to be where we're going to house our title. We're going to use permanent adhesive to adhere this, and we're going to measure 7 inches down from the top edge of the layout and 3¼ inches from the left edge. Now you can see there that the right edge of this piece does not go all of the way to the blue scatter friendship paper. Also notice here that I am adhering it on the left side first. I like to adhere one side down first, then trim it from the edge, so just using my scissors to trim it here. Then I'm going to line up my background cardstock, making sure that's perfectly aligned before I adhere the right side of that piece. This is my way of making sure that everything lines up and I don't have to do any awkward cutting when the piece is adhered all the way across the spread. Don't worry about that little gap on the right side. We are going to cover that up. Let's move on to number 9. We are going to cut the manufacturer's strip from the high neighbor paper, and then we're going to reserve that for later. So locate your high neighbor paper. This is it here. It has some houses, it has that awesome green leaf design, and it has these cute little turtles. We are going to use those turtles. So put that aside for later. Then cut a piece that's 11½ by 5. So I would do that 5-inch cut first, and then cut a 1/2 inch from the side. Because if you cut the 1/2 inch off first, then you just cut 1/2 inch off of the whole piece of paper and you don't have an entire 12-inch long length. So always do the cut first. It's going to allow you to keep the rest of the paper intact. Okay, we're going to butt the rest of these papers up against the blue scatter friendship dot, and we're going to measure 2½ inches from the top edge of the page. Now on this one, I'm going to adhere it down on the right side first because we have that pushed all the way up to that scatter friendship dotted paper. I just recently had my nails done again, and I found that if I use a spatula to help me get edges of paper up, it works a lot better. So if anyone else also has nails that make it hard to get your fingernail underneath the edge of a piece of paper, then I highly recommend having a spatula handy. Now you can see there that pattern paper is going to just slightly overlap the mint cardstock. We're going to be layering up these border strips and paper pattern strips that we're adding here. So then I'm going to go ahead and line up the left side of this pattern and adhere that with permanent adhesive. As you can see, the colors on this layout are very different from the first layout, and I wanted to do that to make sure that I've kept everyone happy. So if you don't love pink, you're going to love this layout. It has some great blues and greens and oranges in it. It's very earthy hued, and I really love that because what I am recording on this layout is all about the outdoors. Now we're just cutting a 1/4 inch notched end on the manufacturer strip that we put aside before. So that turtle manufacturer strip, you're going to cut a little 1/4 inch notched end, and I just do that with my scissors. So I just cut a 1/4 inch in the center of that strip, and then I cut from the corner to the center and the corner to the center again. We are going to adhere that overlapping the mint cardstock by about a 1/4 inch, and again we're going to butt that right edge up against the blue dotted paper. I'm going to adhere the right side first, cut it, and then adhere the left side. So about a 1/4 inch overlapping the mint cardstock. And just make sure that that's nice and straight there before you really get that adhered down. Because we have these lots of linear lines going across, you want to make sure that they're nice and straight. There we go. Then I'm going to flip my paper over, cut that strip, and then adhere the left side to the left side of the layout. Again, about the colors, I hope I've made everyone happy with one layout being quite pink and red and yellow, and the other being the cooler hues. So I've done the best of both worlds here. I just love those little turtles. They are so cute. I got a little bit excited at this point and skipped ahead to number 12. So I grabbed the gingham Here For You paper. It has that floral on the back and this gingham on the front. I'm cutting a 5 3/4 by 1 inch piece of this paper. Don't worry, we will go back to number 11. I just wanted to go in the order that I was creating in the video for you guys. So I cut my 1 inch piece first, and then I'm going to cut the 5 3/4 inches there. But I'm putting that aside because I've realized that I've skipped number 11. So we're going to go back and do that one. This is the Scatter Friendship, our blue paper that we just love from both layouts. And I am going to use that beautiful orange heart on the manufacturer's strip. So I'm going to cut that and then trim it to 9 inches long before we go ahead and cut a 1/4 inch notched end. So trimming it to 9 inches. And again, just using my scissors, since these are quite small pieces of paper, I'm going to cut another 1/4 inch notched end there. And this is just going to finish it off nicely on that left side. So again, we're going to use permanent adhesive here, and we're going to butt that up against the blue Scatter Friendship dotted paper. And then we are going to butt the top edge up against the turtles so that we don't cover up any of those cutie little turtles. And I just love the way that that orange pops against the blue because it's a beautiful contrasting color, and the green. Super pretty. So I've adhered it on the right side first. I turned my paper over. I will line up my background and then adhere it on the left side. Creating a double page layout is all about making sure you get everything lined up. So it's all a process of lining up both sides and then adhering, lining up both sides and then adhering. But the great thing about double page layouts is that you can get so much on them. Okay, remember that gingham paper? We cut that in number 12 to 5 3/4 by 1, and then we cut a 1/2 inch notched end on there. And I adhered that just below the orange heart strip. So if you need some extra time to add that on, go ahead, pause here, and take that now. If not, we're going to go ahead and start adhering our photos. So we are on step number 13, and we're going to start with our 4x6 photos. I'm using scrapbook adhesives by 3L, foam squares here, which I love, and I am going to adhere this on the blue dotted Scatter Friendship paper. You can measure this out. It's about 3 inches from the top, but I measured it from the green leaf paper on the left side. So it is in the center of that green leaf paper in the center of the scatter friendship dotted paper. But if you want to go ahead and measure with your ruler, it's 3 inches from the top. I'm going to take the second 4x6 photo and adhere that with permanent adhesive just below it, about 1/4 of an inch from the top photo. You might recognize the cutie with my daughter in these photos. His name is Wonder Boy. So if some of you don't know, this is Shamel's son, Wonder Boy, and he is the cutest little kid, and my daughter and him have so much fun together whenever they see each other, which is only about once a year when we're in the UK. I'm grabbing my 4x4 photo and I am going to adhere that right in that square to the left of my 4x6 photo. Again, if you want to measure that, it's about 3 inches from the top edge, and then you want to come in 1/4 inch from the left edge of that right side. But you could also just center it on that square of the leaf paper there. So these two kids, whenever they get together in the summer in the UK, they are the best of friends. And that's why I named this layout Besties for the Day. So if you have some photos of besties, your friends, your kids and their friends, this is a great page to record that on. I'm taking my second 4x4 photo and I'm adhering that on the left page 1/4 of an inch from that right edge, and again 3 inches from the top. So all three of those photos on top should be lined up. Now our photos have been adhered, and I love the way this layout is coming together. Next, we're going to grab the reaching out paper. This one has these awesome 3x4 cards. So if you're a pocket page scrapbooker, these are awesome for just using as a filler card. And they're great to use next to a layout too. So they really can tie together your layout and your pocket page if you put them side by side. We talked about that in my Inside the Pocket class from Scrapbook and Cards Today magazine, how to put together a traditional layout and a pocket page, and it's something that I do all of the time. So you are going to choose one of the 3x4 cards from that reaching out paper and cut it out. I used this one about giving things time to grow because I'm talking about kids. But if you have one of those cards on the sheet of paper that fits better with your story, feel free to use that one instead. So I'm going to adhere this with permanent adhesive to the left of my 4x4 photo on the left side of the spread, and I'm going to place it at a slight angle with that bottom edge slightly covering the left bottom corner of the photo. Next, we're going to grab the Hello You paper. That's the one that we use to cut our awesome rainbows from. And I love this Hi Friend speech bubble, so I want to use that to fussy cut out. This is just a tiny fussy cut. I'm also going to use that You're Cool square there too. So it's perfect just to cut these two out. You can leave the rest intact. Again, if there are two squares that you think work better for your story, feel free to use those instead, friends. This is all about your layout and making it your own. And if you have photos already selected and you think one of those other squares would work better, then go ahead and use those instead. So that Hi Friend, I'm going to use my scissors here and fussy cut that out. And I want to make sure that I leave a bit of that orange around the outside edge because it's going to pop against that green and add a bit of contrast there. Now remember earlier I said that contrast holds more visual weight. So we're going to be adding a lot of contrast to the left side of the spread. Things on the white background that are going to pop, and that's going to help bring some of that visual weight over to the left side. So some of the things that add more visual weight besides contrast are texture and color. So brighter colors add more visual weight, more contrast. So if you have a bright color against white or black, it's going to hold more visual weight. And if you have something that's heavily textured, now I know paper isn't textured if you touch it, but it does have a visual texture to it. So all of those rainbow scallops at the top have texture. Now the Your Cool square, we're going to use that to cover up that little gap over there on the right side of the mint cardstock. So you're just going to use permanent adhesive and adhere that at a slight angle so that it's overlapping the blue dotted paper. Okay, remember that awesome stick together paper that we cut those little phrases out from layout 1? Well, this is the top row, and I want you to cut out the stick together from that top row, and we're going to use that on the layout. If there's another one that works better for you, then go ahead and use that phrase instead. I'm also going to cut out a couple more phrases. I'm going to cut the better together, and that's the darker blue from the next row down. So go ahead and just trim that just so that you see a small amount of that white edge. So the better together, we are going to adhere, overlapping the photo and that 3x4 card that we adhered on the left side of the spread. We're just going to adhere that right to the bottom edge of the photo. I'm going to put the other one aside because we're going to use that to kind of layer up some embellishments later on. So just put the You're the Best aside. Okay, we're now on step 20, friends, and we're grabbing the phrase ephemera pack. We're going to find some of the die cuts in here. So I'm starting out on the smaller portion on the top. We are going to grab the cute little book that says Hello Friend. I just love all of these little ephemera pieces. We're just going to grab the globe that says Adventure Awaits on it. And those are the ones in the small portion. I'm going to open the bigger bottom section here to grab a few more. And these are really fun. I just love those multicolored words like the celebrate one we used in the last layout. Okay, so I grabbed the Yay banner and the Besties word, and then this bunting that says hello. And those are all the pieces. So you have Besties, Yay, the Adventure Awaits globe, the book, and the hello bunting, the multicolored bunting there. So we're going to use this Besties word as part of our title, and I'm grabbing foam adhesive to stick that down behind it. It's going to pop up that word and help it to stand up a bit. I'm going to adhere that about a 1/4 inch from the left edge of the leaf paper right on that bottom edge of the leaf paper. I'm also going to use dimensional adhesive on this yay banner. I'm just going to cut one of my squares in half. And this banner is going to go underneath my 4x4 photo on the left side of the page. I'm just going to adhere that right there along the edge there. Moving to the right side, the bunting, which is super fun, just love it, is going to also be adhered using dimensional adhesive, but it just slightly lays on the photo on the right side, and I'm just checking here that I'm not putting my adhesive in the wrong place. So we don't want to get that dimensional adhesive too far on the right side so that we don't, put that on top of our photo. We also adhered the globe on the You're Cool square and the book on the right corner of the 4x6 photo. Now the You're the Best strip, we just adhered that right under the left edge of the book. So if you want to go ahead and finish those pieces up, just pause here and follow the instructions in the booklet. Now, from the other ephemera pack, this is the Icon ephemera pack, we are grabbing the cutie little turtle, the snail. Don't worry about those leaves. I just set those aside because I thought we were using them here, but we're not. So the turtle, the snail, the trio of butterflies, those were all in the top portion there. And in the larger portion at the bottom, we're going to grab a couple of things too. There are so many awesome pieces in here. So these little bees and the large rainbow. So first, we are going to place this awesome rainbow over on the left side of the page, and we are going to group embellishments here. This rainbow is going to kind of lead your eye to the title. So the start of that title is the word besties, and the rainbow is going to lead you straight to that title. Now we're going to group some embellishments here, and the reason we're going to do that is because when you arrange things in a grouping, it holds more visual weight than if you kind of scattered them around the page. So remember, we wanted to get a lot of visual weight on the side of this side of the spread because we have that really dark and strong piece of pattern paper on the right side. So I'm using dimensional adhesive to adhere my butterflies to the side of the page, just on that top corner of the green leaf pattern paper, and it kind of looks like they're flying out from the pattern paper. Then we're going to grab our cute little turtle here and we're going to adhere him with dimensional adhesive underneath of the Yay banner. And he is right on top of his turtle border strip there. Super cute. I love all of the little critters on this layout. It gives it a very natural feel, an outdoorsy feel. So I hope you guys have some great photos to pair up with this layout. Next up, we are cutting out the bees, and that's because I want to use them separately and not as a trio. So I am just using my scissors to kind of fussy cut around them. We're going to leave a white border. You don't have to worry about getting close to them. You can see in all of these die cuts they have a white border, so we want to follow suit with these bees as well. Okay, so this bee here is facing left. So two of the bees are facing left, one is facing right. You're going to choose one of the ones that's facing left and add him just to the corner of that rainbow. Then we're going to choose the one that is facing right, and we're going to adhere him with dimensional adhesive, and he's going to look like he is carrying that bunting. How cute is that, right? Love it. The third bee we are going to put aside to use on another project in the future. We also have our little snail here, and he is going to get another piece of foam adhesive here, and we're going to adhere him to the bottom left corner of our bottom 4x6 photo. Next up, I'm going to grab the cardstock sticker sheet. We are on number 22. We're going to grab these gold foil branches. You can see that one there by the rainbow design. And I'm going to tuck that just behind my rainbow and layered slightly on top of that 3x4 card. So again, we are grouping smaller things together to create more visual weight. So we're layering, we are tucking, all of that to get the visual weight here on this page. I'm going to put a coral heart at the top and a darker coral heart there by the turtle strip. And I'm also going to put a light pink heart by that bee. So all of those are coming off of the left side of that page, and they're adding some contrast there with those embellishments against the white background. Next up, I'm going to grab this orange butterfly, and I'm going to add him, just stick him to the background there on the left side of the bunting. This sticker sheet has so many awesome stickers. I just love them. So the green branch, we are going to tuck that underneath our photo next to the You're Cool square. Then we're going to choose another gold foil branch and tuck that behind the book. All of these gold foil pieces are adding a little bit of shine to our page, and because that's hanging off the edge of my photo, I am just going to use some dimensional adhesive there to support that. So this little strip says, "Let's get together," and I am going to stick that next to my snail, just slightly tucked under his little snail tail there. So those are all the stickers. Next up, we're going to finish up our title. We are going to grab the puffy alphabet thickers. We didn't use them on the first layout, but we are using them here, so you should have a lot of letters left over to spell out whatever title that you choose. My title is Besties for the Day, because when these two get together, they are besties for the day, and then they don't see each other for another year or so. This thicker is a great size. It's not too large and it's not too small, and it's a plain font, so it goes really well with any of the awesome die cuts that we have in this collection. And one thing I love about creating titles is to balance the different fonts that you use. Combining serif and sans serif or a handwritten font with something plain like this is a great way to get additional balance on your page. Okay, last we are going to get into our little bag of goodies here and scatter some pretty sequins and some wood veneer around this page. I'm pretty much going to add some sequins all around my embellishment groupings and a few arrows around the page. So I'm going to add an arrow here pointing to my title. I'm going to use liquid adhesive to adhere that down. I always love a carefully placed arrow. It can draw your eye to things, and this little arrow is going to kind of just add to this embellishment grouping and point directly to my title. I'm going to add another arrow right here pointing to the You're Cool square. And I had almost forgotten that I wanted to add that little toadstool from the cardstock sticker sheet. So if you haven't added that little guy, you can add him there next to the You're Cool square. So that arrow I pointed directly to the book that says Hello Friend. And definitely be sure that you're mixing and matching the size of these arrows. This one is pointing to the You're Cool square. That's a little shorter arrow. Then I'm going to add some dots all around my embellishment groupings to add my sequins, just like we did on the first layout. So if I go ahead and add my dots first, then I know where I want those sequins to be placed, and I can let that glue get a bit tacky before I add my sequins. And I'm just doing a mix here of the shiny and the matte and the iridescent. Just going to pop a few around this page. Again, I love these sequins. These are the close to my heart sequins. They are just super pretty. I use them on tons of projects. I like using liquid adhesive with them, but you can also use glue dots. That's another kind of mess-free way to do that. So I popped some around my embellishment groupings on the left. I'm going to put a little one here by my turtle to show him some love. I'm also grabbing a wood veneer heart, and I'm going to put that up there on top of the bunting, and I'm also going to put a wood veneer heart here next to my little turtle at the end of my title. So sequins and hearts and arrows, using all of them on this page. Now I need some shine over here, so I'm going to add a dot next to the You're Cool square, and then again another one up there by the B. You can add as few or as many as you'd like. If you have enamel dots in your stash that you'd like to use too, pop a few of those on. This is really just to accent what we've already put on the page, not really add to it. I'm going to put 2 around the book and another 2 around my snail here. And just make sure that you're using different sizes and the different sheens of these sequins just to make it more interesting. And last but not least, a couple down here next to my snail. And I think with that, friends, we're going to call this double page beautifully balanced layout complete. Now, you might be saying, wait a minute, Meg, where am I going to add the journaling? So I'm going to give you a couple of options. Right here in the middle, on the right side of that spread, you could add a few words, but I usually like to add a little bit more. And to keep my page beautifully balanced, I don't want to add it anywhere else on my background. So I'm going to take a journaling tag and I can tuck it in behind this 4x6 photo here, so that no visual weight is added and my words get placed on the page. If you don't happen to have a journaling tag in your stash, just grab a piece of white cardstock, cut it to 3 by 4, journal on it, and then pop it in behind your photo. I hope you guys loved creating this layout as much as I did. One big takeaway from this one is that if you add a large vertical piece on your layout, you want to balance that with some horizontal pieces to bring that visual weight across the spread. I hope you guys loved creating this one and the single page that we created earlier. I had such a blast creating for this class, and thanks so much. I can't wait to talk to you in our Facebook Live.